So I think that human nature, as it is now, as set within civilization, has a toxic trait to it. Now, that's a pretty bold statement to make. Maybe the word maladaptive would be a better word to describe it, but human nature is far too quick to go to war. That's the toxic trait that I think needs to be tamed in modern humans. I do work on this, and I call this trait moral bias. And it does have a very warlike nature to it. Moral bias is when a particular ideal or goal or cause seems so obvious, so necessary, so amazing, that all objectivity is lost, and all damage in pursuing this goal is ignored. Now, this is what happens. It's happened many times in recent history. Take any perceived threat, no matter how small, and watch as people go into full-on warmonger mode. We've seen this with a particular virus. We watched how the perceived threat of this caused worldwide tyranny, no objectivity, no sense of cost-benefit for any of the policies that were put in place, and we had absolutely no regard for the damage that was done to people's businesses, mental health, etc. Now that's what I mean by moral bias. A very warlike nature to it. We've seen this with terrorism. I'm not saying that that was not a threat, but I'm saying the response to it was overdone. The response to it caused far more death total than the original attack, and after years and years and billions upon billions spent, did nothing. We retreated out of Afghanistan in a very disgraceful, poor way. So this is what I mean by moral bias and how it has a very warlike nature to it, and that I think it's by human design. Now, my argument is that this trait probably works pretty well if you're living in the raw wild, where if any little thing does come around, you do need an over-response. But now that we live in civilization, my argument is that it's now maladaptive, that it's not serving us well. People in the wild have their issues. I'm not saying they didn't, but you might have had a murderer in tribal cultures, but you never had a Mao or a Hitler. And so, if it is something that's inside us that causes us to unnecessarily go to war and kill things and over-respond to things, we need to consider this about ourselves. My argument is that it's a latent trait in the human mind that is easily triggered by fear. And as far as I can tell, it's in everybody. And I will admit to my own moral bias after 9/11, that I bought into all the war rhetoric at the time. In my defense, I was young. And in my defense, I think this trait is being exploited in people. I think there's some of us that have been around long enough that we now challenge it and we can see it. But it takes decades of living and a lot of thinking and a lot of knowledge to come to that conclusion. So it is far be it from me to want to change human nature. That is not typically what I stand for, but in looking at it, I kind of think we need to recognize this about ourselves. Not so much change it, but consciously understand it. And probably go into massive education mode about it. Now, the reason why I'm even making this video is because I came across an interesting quote today. Here it is. I believe in transhumanism. Once there are enough people who can truly say that the human species will be on the threshold of a new kind of existence as different from ours. Computer just went to screenshot. As ours is from that of Peking man. It will at last be consciously fulfilling its real destiny. And the person who posted it said, the horrors of war remind us that humanity needs to implement something radical to transcend our self-destructive tendencies. Now this quote, the original quote, was from Julian Huxley, an evolutionary biologist, transhumanism founding father. Now, had you asked me if I supported transhumanism before I saw this quote today, I would have said no, absolutely not. Because everything I read about transhumanism is that it's all about like merging us into robots and draconian medical procedures to change our entire biology and overriding who we are as humans. But in reading the original quote and the intent of it, I have to admit I agree with it. I agree that humanity as it is now has to evolve and it has to update, and we have to realize our own toxic nature. This is no easy feat. You're going against people's very natural tendencies. I am not popular when I talk about any of this. I've accepted that because I know I'm fundamentally believe that humanity is kind of broke. Now that's not a easy pill to swallow. So that's why I wanted to make this video, was this idea of transhumanism. Transhumanism is now used as a thing to cause people to fear. Oh, they want to make you something other than human. Is yet more fear. The same people who are trying to speak out against the war rhetoric and the medical tyranny are the ones saying, beware of transhumanism, but it seems to me like they're trying to reduce war and tyranny, and it's not. The thing is, the problems with humankind, we always want to blame it on someone else. It's the Chinese, it's the Russians, it's those bad people, it's the witches, it's the whatever. We have to look at who we are as people. Hard introspection. We are far too quick to go to war. We are far too quick to fall for whatever is the latest. So my book is going to be The Moral Bias of Objectivism, How Moral Ideals Cloud Objectivity. Moral bias has a very predictable pattern. I can name several in my own adult life. It is always kicked off by fear and shame. Draconian measures are put into place. And here's one of the biggest traits. Feedback can never update the system. No amount of this is not working updates what people are doing. Wouldn't it be wonderful if people could actually update? If we could see toxic, bad things and actually say this isn't working for us and actually change? I don't think humanity will make it unless we do that. We are far too rigid. We are far too stuck. And we no longer have a migratory species. We all live in the same place for a long period of time anyway, throughout at any given time in our life. That doesn't engender the kind of flow that we need. We're going to have to break something. Something has to give. So anyway, my website about moral bias is Ex-Objectivist.com. Thanks for watching.